Sergeant James G. Craig, United States Army, Vietnam. I interviewed Jim in Longmont, Colorado, April 6, 2007. He was 61 years of age at the time. 5 years later, he was on a tour in Vietnam and he died, tragically. So ironically, he served in Vietnam, came home for 40 years, went back, and he died over there, so at the age of 66. So in his memory, we share his story today. And I want to thank John Wynn. John is from Vietnam. He came over to the United States. He loves this country. He's one of the most loving, God-fearing patriots that I know. John, God bless you, sir. You have really helped me with my work. I want you to know that, making available now people to hear Jim Craig's story today. And I just salute you, John Wynn, and thank you. It's good working with you, and I'll see you soon and interview you in person. Amen. Jim served with the Americal Division, Sergeant Craig, and he's with the 196th Light Infantry Brigade, which is the 3rd Battalion, 21st Infantry Division, Bravo Company. He was in 11 Bravo Infantry. He was drafted into the military, and he served his country faithful, folks. And this is another perspective. A lot of you are saying, I'm learning so much about these wars and learning so much about history from all over the world. And I just think that's so cool. I had a gentleman in the UK. If you're out there listening, thank you for your comment yesterday. It meant a lot to me. Australia, I get comments from, and other parts of the world. New Zealand, too many to remember right now. France, Italy, Germany, and of course Canada, Mexico, United States. But I thank you for watching these stories. And folks, I'm telling you right now, encapsulated in these stories is why we're free. Is why we've had the freedoms we've had, even though we're losing a lot of them because people are too apathetic, they're too complacent, they acquiesce about too many things, they're passive subjection and submission. And I just think we need to really shake ourselves up, folks. These veterans, these stories, the freedoms that they fought for weren't in vain. And it's so important. We're really blessed. Think about it, folks. This is a blessing to have this YouTube channel and the radio station now, because these stories can be heard. The truth can be heard. And I know it's that God says to give honor to whom honor's due, and that's what we're doing here. We're honoring them. They paid a debt that we can never repay. And folks, I'm just so grateful. My heart's full as we share Jim's story and all these other stories, and just took a moment there to just reflect. And it's so important, encapsulated. These videos, like I said, are like a time capsule. 100 years from now, people are going to look back and go, wow, that's what they did to get what they had. Let's not lose what we have, folks. I'm telling you, grab a hold of the freedoms. Do whatever you need to do. Let's position ourselves in this country, and let's just honor our veterans, past, present, and those who will serve in our military. So, okay, Jim Craig, I'm so glad we're able to share your story today on the Voices of History YouTube channel and radio station. Folks, if you'd like to sponsor a video like John Wynn did and does, it helps me. There's information in the video description and in the comment section of the video. You can donate to my work. So you can go to LarryCapetto.com, click on Sponsor a Vet, send me the name of the veteran you'd like to sponsor, and I'll do the rest. So, and I'm so grateful for all of you out there. And I want to thank John Penn. John's a truck driver. I just want to always shout out to him. He's been a great supporter of my work. S.K. Alfstad, thank you, sir. You've been a great supporter of my work, and I just can't thank you guys enough. And I know God is blessing you for it. So, but folks, again, the radio station's there, Voices of History Radio. I encourage you to check it out or share it with somebody that might have the time to listen to these stories. We can never hear them, I think, enough. I really think this is something that's part of our country, our heritage, our history, and it never gets old to me. So, okay, that's it for now. Thanks for subscribing to this channel and my radio station. Thank you for sharing these videos and these stories, and I will talk to you again on my next broadcast. Thank you.
Vietnam?
February 70 to April 71.
And how old were you at that time?
Well, I was older than a lot of guys. I'd already been to college, so I was 23, 24, I think, when I got over there. Yeah.
How old are you now?
61.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, were you drafted? Did you?
Yeah, I was drafted. Yeah.
Okay. How did you feel about that at the time?
Well, my so I was telling Lou, my dad was a career guy, so I lived on military bases a lot of my life. So I understood a little bit about the military at least, but I lived in the best country on the planet. So when I got the bill, which was the draft notice, I went and paid it. That's how I looked at it. If they wanted me to do this, then that's what I was going to do.
So you're okay, you went to Vietnam. What was your unit you were with and your MOS at the time?
I was 11 Bravo, that's infantry. And I was with, we went to Cameron Bay, and they assigned us in-country orders from there. So I went to the Americal Division in 196 Light Infantry Brigade. We were light infantry with 3rd Battalion, 21st Infantry, Bravo Company, B Company.
And your rank at the time?
Well, I was E2, private E2 when I got over there. And I think I shortly was promoted to PFC. And then when I left, I was a buck sergeant E5.
So you were there 1 year?
I was there 14 months. I extended 2 months.
Okay.
And that was really commonplace because at that time, because they had what they call ETS or DEROS. You may have heard this before, but DEROS is when you're going back to the States. Okay, ETS is end of time in service. So they had the Army had a thing. If you came back to the United States after Vietnam and you had less than so much, I think it was 18 months to go or something for your term, for your active duty, then they would just let you out early, like an early out. So guys were extending. Usually it was 2 months. You'd have to extend from a 12-month tour, and to get under that 18-month thing, and which is what a lot of us did. Some of us did anyway.
So first time you went in country, what do you remember about being in country as far as the sights and smells, the geography of Vietnam?
Well, got off the plane at 3 o'clock in the morning, Cameron Bay, and the heat hits you right away, and there's a little bit of a smell. I don't think probably Cameron Bay's on the East Coast, and it's not like Saigon or someplace like that, but it was Friday, February the 13th. So, but what I noticed about it was there weren't the normal the lights that you have at an airport. These were like blue lights, minimum lighting kind of thing. And I don't know what the plane did. I'm sure they refueled, but they didn't hang around very long. They left, and then we got they put us in these kind of school bus, like you'd call them a school bus, and they all had cages or bars on the windows. And he says that's to keep the grenades from coming in. The rear echelon guys really try and scare you and all that stuff. But we drove through the sand dunes. And then I was there about 2 or 3 days before I went up to Chu Lai, which is where the Americal division was. But
okay. Americal, that's just the name of an infantry division?
Yeah, that originated in World War II, and that was named from New Caledonia, American division in New Caledonia. So they shortened it to Americal, and then reactivated for Vietnam.
So as a young man over in Vietnam, just tell me about a day-to-day operation, what you guys did, where you were, and tell me about the enemy a little bit.
Yeah, as I told you, we were on LZ Center, which is about halfway between the South China Sea and the Laotian border in I Corps, in northwest of Chu Lai, west of a town called Tam Kỳ. And we're almost, if you got on our far sport base and you looked out east, you could probably see a little bit of what we called the flats, which was usually just what the term we used for the rice paddy area. If you went to the west, not very far, all of a sudden you're in the mountains. You start going to mountainous areas, and the farther west you went, the higher it got, the mountains, but jungle. But we were light infantry, so I can remember only one mission that we had where we had 11 Charlies, mortar guys with us, little team of mortar guys, and they had to carry the base plate and the tubes up and down these hills. I felt so sorry for them. just the one mission though, and they just went out to the end of this ridge line where center was at about a click and a half, and set up, and they were doing spotting, see if we could see any enemy, and use the fire mission for mortars with them. But that's the only time we ever had any heavy, even, and this is when the 4 deuce, this is a little mortar, the 83 millimeter, whatever it was, so, or 81. So most of the time, the heaviest thing we had a couple machine guns, M60 machine guns, and then we had these lightweight M79, well, we had grenade launchers, but we had these anti-tank weapons, but they're M72s, I can't think of the, but there's one shot in them. They're only about this long, and they're real light, really. But that's the heaviest stuff we had. And then we had, of course, we all had M16s. But we would march, we would walk in through the jungle and everything, going to where we were supposed to go, and we walked most of the places that we went. Once in a while, we would get combat assault CA'd by helicopter if they wanted someplace in a hurry. And,
well, tell me about that, because I'm focusing a lot on the air mobile.
I know you mentioned it, yeah.
Tell me about the Huey helicopter, its purpose, and then how you utilized it to get into landing zones.
Okay. Well, they had these Bell UH-1 Huey helicopters, and they took the doors off. And so then we called them slicks when they took the doors off. But they had a crew of 4, pilot, co-pilot, and they had a crew chief and a door gunner set on either door in the back where the doors were. But you could get 6 troopers in there with their rucksacks on. So they would pick us up, and we would get in there, and then we'd take off for parts unknown. And I was trying to think last night of the longest trip we ever took, and I'm thinking it wasn't over a half hour, 45 minutes. I mean, because usually we're going east or west, and there's not, you can only go so far east or west before, you know, it's a long, narrow country. So, and then they would drop us someplace, and I think we had 6 or 8 of those the whole time I was in country, not a lot. And we only, from my personal experience, I only had one hot LZ when we came in. I remember that, and it wasn't really that bad. Helicopter was taking fire, and you can't hear anything in there because you don't have the headsets that the crew does. You look at the crew and try and figure out what's going on. And the door gunner looked at the crew chief, and they were nodding. The chopper was going like this. See, next thing I got a foot in my back, and this guy's kicking me out of the chopper 10 feet off the ground. You know, they didn't want to land if they're getting, which I kind of see their point, but you know, I'm not sure they saw our point. But it wasn't too bad. After we got on the ground, at that particular time, we didn't have anything in the near future that we ran into. But usually, if we had to be someplace in a hurry, they would drop us off in a rice paddy or on a hilltop somewhere, and then we'd deploy from there. It's just a speedier way of. Now I understand the air cab went in and out every day on those choppers. You know, it's like a cab for them, taxi for them. But
what about the engagements with the enemy on the ground where you were? Was it a frontal attack? Was it a sniper fire? What type of engagements would you have?
My personal experience. This is I Corps in 1970. The VC were not very strong. You know, I don't think many people understand that. After the Tet Offensive, the VC lost a lot of their power, but you know, you never see much of the enemy anyway. And if you do see them, you see them 4 or 5 of them on the rice paddy dyke about a click away. So as you said, we'd get sniped at once in a while, but they were big on booby traps and stuff like that. The MVA never did much booby trapping from my perspective, from what I saw. But the VC, that's what they like to do. And our missions when I first got over there were company-sized missions. And we had field strength of about 100 guys, 3 platoons, 30, 35 guys a platoon. And if you run 100 guys through the jungle, if there's anybody there, they know where you're at and where you're going. And so we would run a lot of booby traps, and we tried to cut trail when we could, but you really can't make a lot of territory when you're walking all the time to get from point A to point B if you stay off the trails. And that's the only way to avoid booby traps, stay off the trails. But then we got a new battalion commander, and who was really a good officer. His name was Saint, and he had a brother, and I don't know, James Saint was one of my, I don't know if he was James or not, but he gets off the chopper and he comes out there and he says, okay, we're going on a night ambush and I'm walking point, who wants to go? That kind of guy, leadership, okay? So anyway, but he split us up, and he said, now from now on we're going to go off. When we go off the fire support base on a mission, we're going to go off about half a click, and then we're going to split up into platoons. And we can all support each other if we just stay within a click of each other, and you can cover more area. And they don't always know where you're going if you do that. That really worked out good. And I know we surprised a lot of them doing that, whereas before we didn't. We didn't have as good results. So, and the booby trap stuff cut down, and we quit going on the fire support bases and, I mean, on the hilltops somewhere at night for a night logger and digging foxholes. That's what we did. We had a company unit. And platoon units, we would just move around till it get nearly dark, and then we would just sleep on a trail somewhere and put guards on either end of the trail, and that's where we slept. So it never got surprised. I mean, it was good that way. But
did you lose any friends in Vietnam, or wounded or killed?
I think we had in my company while I was in the field. And I was in the field from probably late February, early March of '70 to first week of November of '70. That's 8 or 9 months, maybe almost 10 months, maybe. But our company had 6 killed, and we had a lot of injured. I wouldn't want to get maybe 20 or 30 guys injured, but probably the big casualty thing wise anyway for us was in middle of May to early June, we were C8 over to the Hep Duck area, which is west of our normal area of operations. And Hep Duck is a big relocation village for civilians. So the enemy, it's my understanding, I've talked to other people there before I was, that they were always trying to do something over there and get the villagers to, turn them to their way of thinking, I guess. But and that's when NVA in this Hep Duck Valley, and we had a lot of casualties then. And for 2 weeks, it was kind of bad. But usually, and that's where like 3 or 4 of the KIAs were during that period of time. The rest of the time it was one guy hits a booby trap, another guy, does this or that. I mean, I'd say I never got hit, so I would say I was very fortunate, and I think our unit was fortunate considering the circumstances and everything. I mean, that's how I feel about it. But
so you're there did you say 14 months?
14 months, yeah.
So did you count down your days before you left?
Oh, yeah.
Was that a big deal for
you?
you?
Yeah. You start that right away. Well, you have your helmet. You have a helmet liner, and then you have what we call steel pot, which is a heavy metal thing goes over the top of it. And then between that, you have a camouflage cover. You put it on your helmet, and then you tuck it in between the helmet liner and the helmet. Everybody put a calendar on there, and they would put a 12-month, and every square was a month. Every time you finished off another month, you would cross it, you would color it in. But you also knew to the day, how many days you had left to go for the tour. So, and actually, I'm going to retire this year, and I even have a short timer calendar now for when I retire, because I flash back to that, and it's kind of, it gives you something to look forward to, that you're counting down the days and everything.
Well, tell me about just some more about combat. I mean, the combat that you experienced. How would you define combat if you had to define it? What does it sound like?
Well, I mean, all of a sudden, there's firing, and then it seems like it's coming. You're not sure where it's coming from, and it's sporadic, and then it picks up, and then they're looking for cover and everything. And you got people on the radio, and everybody's asking everybody what's going on. There's a lot of confusion, and then there's almost a little delay thing. If somebody gets hit, I don't know if it's a nurse thing or something, but sometimes they're screaming right away, but sometimes it takes them 20 or 30 seconds before they start yelling and stuff. And then they always want to know, are my legs okay? Are my testicles still there? This kind of thing, So then you're trying to get the medic to help them, or trying to help them, and then most of the time what happened to us was ambushes and stuff, and we're in heavy foliage. You don't know who's where, or where all the fire's coming from and everything. But it's I think that more than anything, of course, that's what you're trained for. It's where your training helps you the most of anything, for the discipline, because you need discipline. You can't just go off on your own, and you got to have a reason for what you do and think about the consequences, and you're doing that while people are shooting at you. So I kind of worked my way. I got sniped at a couple times when I was over there about a month, and one night, and that was the end of that. We jumped in the slit trench, and we had Spooky come and bail us out, and it wasn't much. It was a couple guys on the hillside across from us. And then I'm trying to think. Guy next to me, we're coming in online, where usually you're walking on a trail, you're single file. Then we saw a hooch area, so we go in online, which is just side by side. And all these hooch areas, when you get in about 15 to 20 feet from the hooch, it's just flat. There's no vegetation, because that's where the people lived. And it's beaten down dirt. And we were in that area. We were 10 or 15 feet from this hooch area, and we didn't see anybody in there. And the guy next to me says, there's a dink or something, whatever he saw. I can't remember what he said. And we all hit the ground, and then we started scurrying for trouble. And I think the guy saved our life. I mean, you know, it was a guy that to my left who had been behind me. And then we got around to the side, and I think we foiled the ambush. I don't know if they're going to ambush or not, but they were in this hole and behind the hooch area. So stuff like that. One time a guy in front of me stepped on a booby trap, and he got messed up pretty bad, and the guy behind me got hit with shrapnel, but I didn't get hit. Went by me. So I was lucky. That was Easter Sunday, 1970. I was lucky that day. But I mean, like I said, I was lucky pretty much the whole time I was over there. I had dysentery for a couple of days and jungle rot, and that's about it.
So what was the hardest part of what you had to do with your,
Well, it's a tough lifestyle, and then it's complicated when you get into combat. When you have, I don't know what the language restrictions are here, but what we call it in the shit when we got in combat, and you're already frustrated and tired and all this other stuff, and then you have to deal with that. So, just the lifestyle of sleeping in the rain and on flat rocks and stuff, and then you see, I don't know if it's a natural human inclination, but a guy steps on a booby trap and it's up ahead of you. You can hear him yelling, and your curiosity, it's a human thing. Who was it? What happened to him? So you want to move up the line to see what happened to the guy. And after you do that a couple times, then you don't want to do it anymore. You know, if you follow my meaning there, I mean, it's kind of the same thing, and see the piece of the guy's leg laying there or whatever, and he's screaming and everything until they get some morphine into him. And so those are hard times there, because you know guys, and there's one guy who lost both his legs when I was walking point. He stepped on something. There were 7 of us that walked by it. He stepped off the trail, and he tripped it when he stepped off the trail. And I felt kind of guilty about that for a while, because your point man, you get a lot of. I only walked point maybe a month while I was there, but you get input into where you're going, how you're going to get there. You want to cut trail, you want to go on this trail over here. And we had a time frame. This is the excuse that I give myself. We had a time frame where we were going to be there. If we cut trail, we may not actually get there in time. We're supposed to meet some G2 guys from division or something, come out on the chopper. And so I said, I'm running the risk, I'll take the trail. Well, I'm not the only one running the risk. There's all the guys behind me, see? So that was not good judgment on my part. So.
How did Vietnam change you as a person? Did it change you?
I think it changed everybody. I mean, even if you weren't a combat veteran, just to see how other people live in a third world country like that, and see how war affects them, even besides how it affects you. I mean, that changes you, and you're a little more cynical about things. And I think the big thing is when you get back, normal everyday things that used to be important aren't that important anymore. What's important is just just live, enjoy life. Don't make a big deal out of everything. I'm sure a lot of guys felt that way. I felt that way. I still feel that way. So.
How about coming home? Did you have a homecoming of any sort when you came home, or at that time?
Well, when I went over there, I went through Fort Lewis, Washington, and I came back the same way. And I got home I lived in Illinois at the time, and I got in O'Hare about 2 in the morning, and I had to catch a little flight down to Decatur, which is where I'm from, or was from at the time. And the airport was closed, so I had to sleep in the airport. But I didn't have it for 5 or 6 hours. But I didn't have any bad incidents or anything. But I had people that go through Oakland and San Francisco airport that had a lot of problems, and they were throwing their uniforms in the garbage and everything because they just didn't want to put up with the hassle, which which I can understand that. But I personally didn't have any of those problems. I had went and applied for, finally got a job, and place that I used to work, department store. I went in there to get credit because I didn't have any. I'd used all my money. And I said, I just need a loan so I can buy a shirt and a pair of pants. I'll wear the same thing for a week till I get my first paycheck. And they said, well, you have to go up to the credit area. And the credit area was on the 6th floor, right next to the toy department where I used to work when I was in college. And they still wouldn't give me any credit, just to buy a week's credit to buy a shirt and a pair of pants. And I wanted to buy insurance, automobile insurance. And the guy came out and sold me insurance. He was an older guy, and he didn't have the agent. He didn't have any problem at all. And the next day, I gave him a check. The next day, I got a check back in the mail. The very next day, I didn't think the mail ran that fast. And they said, well, you're not a good risk. You haven't been driving for the last year and a half, you know. So I said, okay, I'll buy my insurance somewhere else. But those are only two. That's really minimal compared to what a lot of my friends had to go through. And the thing that helped me, as I told you, I was older. Well, a lot of my friends back in Illinois had already been over there and back. I had probably a dozen guys, and so I hung around with them when I got back. So, you know, I didn't have anybody hassling me or anything.
How about just going back to civilian life? Was that hard for you at all at the beginning of Vietnam?
Initially, first couple of weeks, I mean, it's hard to adjust. It's a lot harder to come back and adjust than it is to go over and adjust to the. I mean, you wouldn't have convinced me of that when I first went over there. How am I going to do this for 12 months? You know, live like this for 12 months. But I really can't explain it. But coming back is just when you're trying to get in civilian life and do stuff like that. I mean, just it was difficult. I mean, it wasn't to the extent where I was going to see a psychiatrist or anything like that. I didn't want to make any GI benefits. I don't even want to use them, but I can see why people do. I mean, you know, I never got hit, so I'm lucky, and I'm not pressing any of this stuff, and I'm just going to go on. So, and I'm not judging anybody who uses GI benefits because they all deserve it, as far as I'm concerned. But me personally, it wasn't for me. So. But
some of the things you experienced and saw in Vietnam, I mean, that's not easy stuff to see, is it?
Well, that's a situation. See, that's not normal human activity. So when you get in that situation, you don't have. Well, you say you don't know how to act, you know, and then adjusting is some kind of a personal thing. You kind of within yourself, and but that's anytime you're where people are getting killed, and some of them are your friends and everything. I mean, I like to read history stuff, and I think of these guys that were National Guard guys. Whether you're talking about the British in World War I, where all these guys in the same unit came from a little town, so they go in the services at the same time, and then they go over to France, and they're in the same area, and then they get in a bad situation, they all get killed. So the survivors of that, plus the people back home in that town, it's got to be. And that happened in the Civil War here, too, in the United States. That happened also, where Guard units went, and then they all get killed on the same day or something. Really hard to put up with that. So I don't think it's always hard, but that would be extra hard, I would think. You know.
What do you think people should remember about Vietnam?
I always want to justify. I can't ever make peace in my mind that 58,000 guys died for nothing. You know, people will say that if they want. I think Vietnam was part of the Cold War, part of a larger thing. I always thought if we didn't fight in Vietnam, we'd have fought in Nicaragua in the 80s because they had the same problem down there. I think we showed a lot of resolve, but our tactics weren't very good. And I think as Churchill said, worst thing being in war is losing a war. So you know, once you make the decision to go, you got to go to win. And I think you hear that from a lot of military people. That's not rocket science, but from what I've heard, and I don't know anybody personally, but from the guys that were fighting special ops and stuff like that, you know. They had a lot of success before we even got the ground troops over there. Maybe if we'd have just approached the war more like that, or more like we have in Afghanistan now, I think we'd have had more success. But I don't think we fought it intelligently. Our intelligence wasn't very good, for sure. we didn't know what the other side was doing most of the time. So,
Jim, as a veteran and an American citizen, what does the American flag mean and represent to you?
well, it's an icon. It's a symbol. It's like I don't want to bring any religion into it. It's like a cross is to a Christian, or you know, something of that sort. I mean, it's very important. It's sacrilege to deface it or anything like that. I mean, I don't know. You know, Ray Charles, when he used to sing and he didn't sing "God Bless America." He sang the other one.
He sang
"America the Beautiful,"
yeah.
and I teared up every time I heard that when he said it. He was just the greatest at saying that. I was really sad when he died, but that whole thing. I mean, I don't feel like there's a term that some people use for it, but that I'm over patriotic or anything. I love the flag. I love the country, and I love the Army. My dad was in the Army for 21 years, so nothing's going to change that for me, you know. Even though I was only had 19 months active duty, I wasn't like I was a career guy or anything. But
Are you proud that you're a Vietnam veteran?
Oh yeah, sure am.
People thank you for your service?
I think it's happened a couple of times. Yeah. Of course, we see each other, we welcome back and all that stuff. You know, we have a little brotherhood thing. I don't know if you have enough time, but I'll name a few organizations. Besides VFW and the American Legion, I belong to Americal Divisions Association. That also includes the guys from World War II, from Guadalcanal and Bougainville.
Do they have annual reunions?
Yes, sir. Every June, around Father's Day. This year's going to be in Buffalo. And I've been taking my wife the last 2 or 3 years. She enjoys it because everybody has their wives there now. The sad thing about that, of course, the organization was organized by the guys from World War II. And when we first got into it, when I first started going, there'd be 300 or 400 guys there, and 7 or 8 would be Vietnam vets, and the rest would be World War II guys. Now, of course, with attrition and everything, it's the other way around, which is really sad. Those are great guys. I mean, really. I'm in the CIB Association, the Combat Infantry Badge Association, and the 21st Infantry Battalion Association, and 196 Light Infantry Brigade Association. I just give them $10-15 each one of them a year dues. I don't go to all their reunions. I go to the division one. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. You 2 or 3 days a week, you know, on a weekend, and you have fun with the guys and their wives, and a lot of camaraderie. And
what about Vietnam? The camaraderie, was that strong? I mean,
yeah, of course. When I was there, it was after Nixon had talked about, you know, bringing the troops home, starting to bring them home. And of course, the way he did that was if he'd bring a unit home, he'd bring the colors home. So you have a couple short-timer guys and the flags. So most of the guys weren't, you know, he wasn't sending a lot of more people over there. He was decreasing his troop strength, but he wasn't bringing a lot of guys home at one time, which he couldn't. I mean, you can't just cut and leave. I mean, that's so apropos now. But as this guys in the field, I mean, you live and sleep with these guys. You see them every day. You talk to them and you eat with them, and you endure hard times with them, and so there's a closeness there. Now, in our case, after Vietnam, though, you know, like the guys I see at the division reunion are guys that were in my unit, but they weren't there at the same time I was. There's only maybe 2 guys that were there at the same time I was. And so I almost know them better now, since I've been going to these reunions over the years, that I remember the guys that I was with. But most guys don't want to get involved. They don't want to come back to, you know, join that organization. They want to put it behind them. You know, I respect that, but I mean, they don't know the fun they're missing. But
are there sights, sounds, or smells that bring back Vietnam to you today?
well, the thing that always got me was a ceiling fan. It reminded me of the helicopters. Every time a ceiling fan was on, I'd think of the helicopters. Other than that, I don't think there's much. There's really not much in the United States that reminds you of Vietnam, I don't think, to my personal experience.
war. Were there times that you could help any of the wounded, or was that just the medics that?
No, yeah, everybody's, you look after your buddies, and then even if the guy gets killed, you want to bring his body back, you know. I mean, you always hear the Marines talk, they're big about that. And we surely, one guy, I have to say, one guy, and he was a point guy, and this is the head duck thing, and it was the last day we were over there, which is one of the reasons we had to leave him there. We had a deadline to catch the choppers to go out, and then it turned out we didn't make it anyway. We had to wait, stay overnight, but he went on a little patrol before we left our logger site, and he got killed in an ambush. And there were some other guys injured, but we got them all back, and we couldn't get his body back, and then we had to leave because of the thing, the pressure we were under. But we came back and got his body. We actually came back on another mission after we went back to Chulai for a week or so. And then the NVA were all gone then, which is typical what the war was about. But his body was still there, you know, and we finally got his body back. That hurt us to have to do that. It was bad enough that he got killed, but we did get his remains back after a while.
Well, I'm going to ask you to do one more thing that I ask all the veterans at the end of my interviews.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you to give me a salute into the camera when I tell you to. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
I'll let you know. Okay, right into the camera there, Jim. Go ahead. Excellent. Thank you.